you mentioned the message that the draft sends. Certainly, there are people now in the Panthers organization that are facing more pressure than they were this time last week. And let's start with Xavier Legette. I don't think the guy is in any danger of losing his roster spot, but it would be hard if I were XL not to feel like a message was sent that we don't think you are capable of being the X receiver on this team.
Or at least we're not sure, right?
Yeah.
We don't know. And I think, that's what surprised me a little bit, because I was like, wow. But at least at the same time, like they're looking to act now. Like, I think they understand to a degree how important this window is for Bryce. Maybe they understand that they can only fix the defense, but so much. Yeah. And this team's going to have to outscore a lot of people. So they need to because we saw, look, you could say the same thing about drafting a running back, which also was kind of like, did you get Rico Dowdle? Like, why?
Yeah,
why are we doing that?
Especially drafted a running back that has had his share of injury issues.
Oh God, show Dan Morgan a running back with an injury history and he'll fall straight in love. That was, to be fair, his injury history is a little different. Especially,
for sure.
At least, like ribs are a little different than the ACL situation.
For sure. But let me be as blunt as I can about picking Trevor Etienne.
I know where you're going with this.
I hated it. I hated that pick. It was, to your point, they just signed Rico Dowdle. They keep telling us that Jonathan Brooks needs a year, but will be back. Like, I just did not get it.
Especially at that spot where, there's other talent to be had there and
for
more
sure
positions to need. Like we said, like a 4th round on that. I just was kind of like, I didn't love it. I was not as enthusiastic for sure. I guess they really felt like they don't want to be caught in a situation where one of those two backs goes down and they have nothing else behind him. But at the same time, like, you can sign a guy in free agency to.
For sure. Absolutely. This is what the undrafted free agent class should be for, that emergency situation. Another pick I didn't like puts another rookie from last year under a little bit of pressure, but not just Jatavian Sanders.
I was going to say, we disagree on which one it puts under pressure.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't also put Tommy Tremble under pressure.
I think he's on the most, yeah.
I don't love the Mitchell Evans pick. I don't have anything against Mitchell Evans. Certainly the highlights are incredible, but it felt like one of these things to me. All the talk about the Panthers needing another tight end always felt like we are talking about super high end because this team needs another high end pass catcher. I didn't think they needed a tight end just to add a tight end.
I don't think it was just that necessarily. I think what they wanted was ideally for them, like, the best of both worlds type of guy, in terms of, like, we want a guy that can catch passes and we want a guy that can block well. And from what I was reading, there are people who feel that he's already a better blocker than Tremble, which raised my eyebrows. Yeah. Which, and I was kind of like, oh, interesting. Because you've got, I think, if he can stay healthy, the playmaker element of the tight end spot in Jatavian Sanders. So that's why I feel like he's not on as much notice as a Tommy Tremble, who literally sees a tight end drafted from his alma mater that does the same things he does best, but better, allegedly. Like, and he's, Tommy's on a 2-year deal. Like, it's not like he's on a long-term contract with this team right now. If I'm Tommy Tremble, I'm pissed off. Like, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, from my alma mater, like, this is personal to me at this point. And so,
I would guess now it is totally possible. And we've seen this not just in Carolina, in other places, at other positions, where draft position be damned. If you go into camp and you're the best 1 or 2 guys at that position, you are going to be heavily in the rotation. That may happen with Mitchell Evans. However, they just signed that new deal with Tommy Tremble. I think this is sending you the message that Tremble is fine for this year, but this year is a placeholder. And that second year doesn't really mean much. Like, it's pretty easy to void and move on from.
It could have just been a situation where they really liked him in the draft process, thought, okay, that, if the Tremble thing doesn't work out, that's an option moving forward. And we're like, he's right there. It's the 6th round. Like, why not do it? I think it could have been as simple as that, as opposed to like going into the draft with a plan of like, we have to have tight end, but a lot of people were saying that the Panthers needed a tight end in this draft, which you and I disagreed with. I didn't necessarily agree with it. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, at least if they got a tight end, it didn't feel like they got this tight end just to get one. To me, it felt like they got one that they really liked and saw good value in, that he was still there. And like people really loved it. Like people outside of us really loved the pick. So that definitely and that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct, obviously, as we know. But like at the same time, like that's what made me look into it a little bit more and be like, okay, well, let me see why. And to see that he can catch. Now, the one thing that did give me some hesitation is that it doesn't seem like he's a red zone threat as much. He had like 3 touchdowns, but clearly he was more involved in the pass game than Tremble has been, even though we saw some improvement there. And so, but you're right. Like they just signed Tremble to this contract. So why do that? I mean, maybe they think they'll bring this guy along, but at the same time, like you said, like to me, defense is a top priority. And it was surprising. The 6th round I care less about. So it's kind of like one of those, certainly the 4th round pick with Etienne is that's more relevant, I think, in terms of the defensive players you would have liked to have seen drafted. If you want to take a flyer on a tight end that you like in the 6th round, it doesn't bother me quite as much as taking a running back in the 4th.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I just thought in the draft, like all the talk about the Panthers and tight end, I thought, honest to God, I solely thought is Tyler Warren in play at 8? Because I thought if you take Warren,
I'm so glad they didn't do that.
Well, here's my thing with Warren, right? If you're taking Warren, it's not because he's a tight end; it's because he's a high-end pass catcher. Like that's right. That's all I ever really thought was in play. So I'm just surprised by it. The other name that I think undeniably faces a little bit more pressure today than he did this time last week is Ejiro Evero. Now, certainly he can counter that he needs more bodies in the secondary.
I mean, literally, quite literally.
Literally, yeah.
Literally. Dan, we don't have a roster min at the moment, my dude.
But like he was probably let down by the pick at number 8 and still got everything he wanted out of a pass rush in this draft.
For sure. So
I mean, just to let people know, at least what I have seen suggests that Scorton is going to line up at end. Nick Scorton, the pass rusher from Texas A&M, who they drafted in round 3, and Princely McMillan from Ole Miss is going to line up as an outside linebacker. So they got 2 edge rushers basically in this draft.
Yeah, and that's it's a big deal, and I think that's. They just better hope, I suppose, that they get to the quarterback before he throws it. Because the problem is going to be on that back end where it's there may be no one there.
It's what makes the Cam Jackson pick, I think, a little more valuable. And probably some of these defensive tackles they added in free agency as well is you got to have, if what we are looking at McMillan and saying we like is the speed, well, you need guys to eat up blockers to make sure that he is not derailed on his way to the quarterback, right? And even Scorton, I think, is going to be relied on to eat up some blockers as well for that pass rush.
And they've got a load of big, beefy boys in there. They've got like 3 players, I think, over 325 from what I counted, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. That's me. More weight. Let's do it.
Maybe it's not fair to say Evero is under more pressure now than he was this time a week ago, because I think the dude is feeling pressure. I think there's just no way he doesn't know that he can't have another year like the last 2 he's had.
Well, and what I just hope for his sake is that basically what I fear could be happening, although I don't know, is like I said in the beginning, which is that okay, we're going to make this offense as good as possible so that they can score a ton of points so that people can feel better about Bryce, even if that costs us something on the defense, which bold strategy.
And it is costing you on the defense so far.
And that would definitely that would put Evero in a no-win position yet again at that point.
Sure.
I mean, literally with the safety situation being what it is, I just look, I will let it play out a little bit. We still have a ways to go before the season starts, and who knows who else they'll be able to add. It is a little bit easier, technically speaking, to replace safeties in the NFL than it is an offensive lineman, which is why I was so panicky at this point last season.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to not have any other options and to be at this point, after the draft and literally not even have the roster minimums worth of safeties, you just kind of go,
Yeah.
So what is the plan exactly? Like, can we get more info? I'd just like to know that, like, someone's aware of Did anyone know that of these? Maybe they just forgot. And if I'm Evero, I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me, because it seems like he could be made to sort of like, I don't know. I hope he's not being put in a situation where like this team doesn't have the record that they would like to have, but Bryce puts up great stats and the offense puts up great stats, and then the defense is just thrown under the bus yet again. Thus, Evero is thrown under the bus yet again.
Here's the other thing. Even if he is, let's say what plays out is exactly what you say. Even if he is not thrown under the bus in the sense that, Dan Morgan says and Dave Canales says, this is the big change we're making, we're moving on from Evero. Even if he is offered to come back, if you're Ejiro Evero, knowing what your reputation was before you got here, how much longer do you want to keep doing this with this team?
I mean, yeah, that's the question, right? Because we don't even know the conversations that went on behind the scenes. But if I'm Evero, I would certainly want like some assurances of like, okay, so
absolutely,
like what's going, like, I mean, if I were him, I might even think about leaving now. But you can't really do that, right? I suppose. But I'd be like, screw this. Like, I'm not going to be made to hold the bag for this and like be responsible, because he'll be the one that gets blamed. And everybody would be like, well, he had a chance. They were terrible last year, and like. The context, no one in the NFL takes the time to add the context of like, well, they barely have functioning safeties.